to the entertainment Talking Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video, and free agency is fast approaching. The teams will be able to talk to players in just 5 short days, and that's when the information is going to leak out. And I was thinking about this actually a couple of days ago, and I've mentioned it in a couple of my videos, but in this video, I really want to hit home with it and show you guys the difference in the salary cap from this year to next and why it could actually make sense, as much as I've been outspoken against it, for the Giants to spend big this year in free agency. Now, I'm not even saying that I advocate for this yet. I'm still a firm believer in building through the draft and not going hog wild, which our owner has expressed. I don't believe in overpaying for players in free agency. But if there was ever a year to do it, it would be this one. I'm going to explain why in this video. Most of the time, the salary cap goes up on average of about 6%. A year ago, the salary cap, I think, was 190. This year, it's going to be 200. Or, it might be rounding a bit, but that's about a 6% increase. The projected salary cap increase due to the CBA, which doesn't happen every year, the collective bargaining agreement, there's supposed to be a dramatic increase. And this is the projected numbers for the new salary cap in 2021. Of course, we don't know anything yet. The CBA has not been agreed upon. But if this were to take place, the players would see a dramatic increase in their salaries. Well, the NFL is anticipated to see the 2020 salary cap surpass $200 million for the very first time. We're checking out it potentially surging to $240 million in 2021. And if that were to happen, you're talking about a huge increase of 20%. That's triple of what it normally goes up, which means the players would expect a raise of triple of what they normally get from year to year. We say it all the time, these salaries are outrageous, but the reason they're outrageous is because the salary cap consistently goes up. What was worth $20 million in 2016 is probably worth more like $28 million today. And that's going up incrementally by about 5, 6, 7%, whatever it may be. If it goes up by 20%, which is 3 to 4 times what it normally does, you're going to see salaries skyrocket, because where's that money going to go? Well, it's going to be broken down incrementally. Everybody's going to expect close to a 20% raise. Now, of course, you're adding a game, which players are going to want to be compensated for. Now, from what I understand, they may be adding a couple extra players to the roster due to the fact that they're playing extra games, but those players are going to be league minimum players. Those are going to be guys that you're not paying a lot. The bulk of that money will go to the top tier guys, and it'll be distributed evenly, which will be close to a 20% raise. Well, a 20% raise when you're making $15, $20, $25 million is a lot of money. So if there was ever a year for the New York Giants to go hog wild, and again, I don't even necessarily say I'm agreeing with this, it would be this one. Now, of course, a lot of teams are going to see that, and they're going to think the same thing. So when you hear projected salaries like Jadaveon Clowney for $22 million, and I'll break it down in a second, and you hear projected salaries like Byron Jones for $17 million, even though they sound outrageous today, they might not be outrageous tomorrow if you really think about it. And those two players are probably the most realistic players in terms of big ticket free agents that the New York Giants could get. When you look at the edge rusher market, you're talking about guys like Judon, who I think was tagged, Ngakoue, who was tagged. We'll see what happens with Bud Dupree, but Jadaveon Clowney, as much as some people may be outspoken about not bringing him in, is probably one of the more talented edge rushers in this year's market. And these are just the two players that I thought to go over. The same would apply to a guy like Corey Littleton. The same would apply to a guy like Jack Conklin. The salary is going to go up for every player across the board. Byron Jones is the same thing. He's the best corner in a very scarce corner market this year, which is why he's going to be paid handsomely. But being paid handsomely today may not look as crazy tomorrow. And I'm going to explain why and show you guys exactly what I'm talking about in this video. Jadaveon Clowney of the Seattle Seahawks, of course, he was traded the year before, is due to hit the open market. And from everything you read, he's going to expect about $22 million a year. Now, maybe he'll get 23, and I completely agree with everybody. How do you pay a guy that is not the best at his position, not even close to the best? You could probably argue he's top 10. He's very good against the run. We say it all the time. He gets a lot of quarterback pressures, only had 3.5 sacks, even though he was banged up last year, and some people point to his injury history. But how could you give a guy who's not near the best at his position $22 million a year? And it's insane. And it has to do with the salary cap, how the salary cap always goes up. People make more money. But like I said, this year is different than most, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. $22 million on a $200 million cap, which is what it's projected to be this year, equates to be 11% against the cap. And 11% against the cap for one edge rusher, especially an edge rusher that's not J.J. Watt, he's not Aaron Donald when they were at their best, he's a good edge rusher, is a lot of money, right? It's a 53-man roster, and to chew 11% of that into one player is a lot. Make no mistakes about it. But he may very well be the best player at a position of need for the New York Giants to set them up for a draft in a year where the salary cap is set to explode the next. And especially if you could front load these contracts and only have to pay these guys maybe 18 or 19 the last 2 years of it, when the salary cap's projected to be $270 million, that's not that crazy. That's only about 6% against the cap. But this is what it would be in relation to next year's salary cap. Next year's salary cap, like I've said, is going to be, at least projected to be, $240 million, which is huge, right? 20% increase. Well, that same $22 million, which was 11% against this year's cap, would be only 9.1% off of next year's cap. And you may hear that and you'll say 1.9%. That's not that hell of a lot. When you're talking millions of dollars, it is. $26.4 million would be equivalent to 11% against the cap, which 22 this year is 11% against the cap. That's a $4.4 million difference. That's a lot of money for your salary cap, especially if you were to bring in two players. Now, by the same token, if we were to rewind to the $200 million salary cap, and it was only a 9.1% hit, which 22 is in the 2021 salary cap, the $22 million salary would equate to be $18 million a year. And I'm trying to explain this the best I can. I'm not a math teacher, but I think you guys get the gist that the dramatic increase in the salary cap, you could actually argue that you'd actually get some of these big ticket free agents on a discount as opposed to next year. And it could actually make sense if you're going to bring in big ticket free agents to do it this year more so than any other before this collective bargaining agreement comes out. And I think players know this, like Dak Prescott, take him for example, because I've talked about him. There's a strong chance that Dak is trying to get franchise tagged because he knows there's going to be a 20% increase next year. And if he's projected to make 33 this year, that would be like 39 the following. So he looks at it like, okay, I'll get franchise tagged and then I'll go up and make my $39 million a year. And I think a lot of players may be thinking that way. Jadaveon Clowney, however, can't get franchise tagged. I think there's like a clause in his contract where he can't be franchised for a second straight year. Byron Jones, a guy who is an average corner. No, he's not average. That's wrong. Definitely above average, but not great. Right? When you think great corners, you probably don't put Byron Jones in that discussion. He's versatile. He could play safety. He could play corner. And he'd bring a lot of value to the New York Giants. It would probably equate to be what the Janoris Jenkins signing was when the Giants brought him in. Jenkins was a borderline elite corner. Byron Jones might be a little step below that, but he's a former Pro Bowler and he's very young and incredibly athletic. Is projected to be the highest paid corner in a very scarce market. His projected salary is $17 million a year. We've heard 15, now I'm hearing 17 or 18. Let's just say it was $17 million a year against the $200 million cap. That's a lot of money, which equates to 8.5% against the cap for a good, not great corner. And I know that the salary's crazy. But when you put it in relation to the following year's salary cap of, what's projected to be $240 million, you're talking a 1.4% decrease of 7.1% of the cap. So if the Giants and NFL teams are forward thinking, they may think this way. And that is why you're hearing teams that are willing to spend this kind of money on these players, because today's salaries are going to look a lot cheaper than tomorrow's salaries. To put that in perspective, 8.5% against the cap would be a $20.4 million contract as opposed to a $17 million contract. And to put it in perspective by the 2020 salary, 7.1% against a $200 million cap is approximately $14 million a year. So $14 million for Jones and $18 million for Clowney doesn't sound so crazy. Of course, 22 and 17 on a $200 million salary cap does, but on a $240 million salary cap, even though the money's crazy, the percentage doesn't sound nearly as crazy. So that is actually why, when I really sat back and thought about it, why I thought it actually could potentially make sense for the New York Giants if they were ever going to spend on two big ticket free agents. It may actually be this offseason, right? I'm never somebody who's stuck in my ways. I'm willing to think outside the box and think about things. And when I really thought about this, again, I'm not even necessarily advocating for this because the Giants have so many holes. But if they were to spend big in free agency on any season, this would be the year. Due to the fact that the salary cap is projected to go up by 20% next year. And I just brought those two free agents because those are two of the big ticket guys we've been linked to. If you want to sub Corey Littleton into that exercise or Jack Conklin, whoever, Jack Conklin, for example, say he's going to make $19 million a year. Let's say 20 because that's easier to do the math. A 20% increase on $20 million is $24 million. So that is the way I look at it. Yes, the salary cap goes up every year, but this year it's supposed to go up triple what it normally does in terms of percentage. So the Giants and other teams may be looking at that and may say, well, if we're going to spend, this may be the year to do it. We'll have to wait and see if the Giants take this approach or if the other teams take this approach. But if we were going to go hog wild, this may be the offseason to do it. We'll have to wait and see. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.